Welcome to day 19 of Pelling with Glen. Today is a left-hand day. We're going to work through all our basic shots, and then we're going to actually add a new shot. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's start with sword leg back. We do our frame chops. As always, front toe pointing at your opponent, right foot 45 to 90 degrees off from pointing at your opponent. Make sure your hips and your shoulders are moving in sync, and make sure you're not chambering, you're not pulling your hand back before you're throwing the shot forward. Right? Also, make sure you're not throwing it with just your arm. That's going to be your slowest and your weakest shot. We're going to be using our whole body to activate these shots. So, final note, or final note here, that is make sure you're making these shots your own. So if you need to decrease the power stroke, in fact you should for a lot of shots, you can decrease it, right? Maybe you throw your frame chop from here instead of from where I'm throwing it. Maybe when we're doing the horizontal chop, right? This one, you need to have a little more distance for your power stroke to get the power you need. Make these shots your own. So there's gonna be a little bit of tweaking you're gonna have to do to make them work out exactly what you want, optimized for you. All right, so with that in mind, let's go ahead and start with our frame chop. Left hand, sword leg back. We're gonna go 3 target locations, high, medium, low. And let's begin, 10 of each. And a tiny step closer, and 10 low. All right, very good. Let's go ahead and switch feet, sword leg forward. 10, 10, and 10 again. Good, 10 medium or 10 middle. Ten low. Good. Let's go ahead and switch back to sword leg back. We're gonna do our jab chops. Jab chops. All right, let's go ahead and switch feet, sword leg forward. As always, if you're not working the same pace I am, that's fine. Feel free to pause the video, do your shots, get back up to where I am, and then continue. All right, this is about doing it right, not doing it fast. All right, 10, 10, and 10 again. And 10 more. Good. So that was sword leg forward. Let's switch back to sword leg back and do our forward chops. Right, let's do forward motion. So we're gonna do 30 of these, or if you have multiple levels, which I don't, 10, 10, and 10, 15, and 15, whatever you can do to break it up to hit multiple levels if you have multiple levels. So, as always, remember to keep your hand high when you're throwing shots here, not here, because we're always looking to get over people's guards and over their blocks when we're throwing this shot. All right, let's begin. All right, very good. Let's go ahead and switch feet. A little bit too close. Let me slide back a little bit here. All right, very good. Now, in amp guard, I want to be hitting with the very tip of our weapon because we don't have some sufficient force requirement. So I don't want to necessarily hit here. When hit here, gives us our maximum reach, right? So that was our 30 shots, sword leg forward. So let's go ahead now and do our crossbody chops. Sword leg back. Start with our frame chop. I'm going to do 10, 10, and 10. I'm not going to go quite as low on this frame chop, just for a little variety here. So, ten middle. And 10 low. Let's go ahead and switch our feet. Sword leg forward. Same thing. 10, 10, and 10. I think I'm going to throw these last 10 down into what would be a mid leg. So, ten middle. And now 10 low. All right, very good. So now we're going to do our jab chops, cross body. We're going to go back to sword leg back. And again, 10, 10, and 10. Ten middle. And as always, if you're not keeping up, that's fine. Pause the video, do your shots, catch up. All right. Also, make sure you're staying hydrated, getting a break if you need it. If you're throwing these really sloppily because you're all tired, take a short break, let your arm get a little energy back, and then resume. And now my 10 low. Go ahead and switch feet. Throw these cross body. Ten middle. And then 10 low. Always make sure you're coming back to a guard position. Don't just throwing them low, because this is not teaching me to come back to guard to throwing a shot. It's also not teaching me the full shot, because I'm not going to be standing like this to throw shots. Just standing like this means hit me in the upper body. I'd be standing in some sort of guard, then I would throw low. Standing in some sort of guard, then I would throw low. So make sure that when you're throwing these shots, you're coming all the way back to your guard position. 10 low. All right, that was our jabs. So we've now done our same side chops. We've done the two same side, the one down the middle, two cross bodies. So now, time to do wraps. We have one wrap, or two wraps that we've learned already. We have the full wrap, which is where we come out, move along a flat surface, get to about 45 degrees off our target, and then we rotate our hand, and that brings our elbow up. So elbow comes up, hand rotates, sword stays flat. It's not this, right? Because that would actually be just my sword arm rotating without my elbow coming up. It is the sword staying flat on that plane as I rotate in. So that's our first wrap. We're gonna do 30 of those. We're gonna, again, just throw at the middle target again. Not getting fancy with our wraps. We're gonna work through them. Wraps some people have the most trouble with, especially with their offhand, which for many of you is your left hand. So 30 wraps, mid-body. And begin. I want to get a little bit closer for wraps because wraps are a shorter shot because you've got that angle instead of that full reach. Good. All right, let's go ahead and switch feet. Sword leg forward. Do 30 wraps, sword leg forward. Again, if you need to take a short break, that's fine. If you're not quite keeping up speed with me because you're working through your shots slower, great. Glad you're taking that kind of initiative. Just go ahead, pause the video, join me when you get caught up. Good. So the wind took out one of my cameras and I lost track of where I was. So I think we'd finished up same side wraps. So we're going to pick up by throwing now our fastball pitch wrap. If you recall, this is if we had a sword blade, right? 2 striking surfaces. In fact, my seam can do a good job of that. Well, I've only got one seam. There we go. Now the seam is my edge. I would start out throwing what would be flat, and then when I get to about here, I pick up my elbow. That brings my sword tip in. So it's a fastball pitch, whoosh, elbow up. So that is our fast pitch wrap. We throw it like we're throwing a baseball. Psh, right? Obviously, you don't throw a baseball quite like this because I would pitch it in the ground, but it's a very similar motion. Right? We just bring our hand further down, and then we pick our elbow up, right? Using our delts to lift our upper arm, lift our whole arm actually. Bam. So that gives us a shot that will strike with the back edge. So let's go ahead and throw our 30 of those. I'm gonna throw 10 slow and then 20 at speed. And now 20 at speed. All right, good. You may have noticed some of you are skipping down. If you're throwing this and your shot skips down, that's because you're not picking your elbow up enough. So difference between not picking my elbow up and picking my elbow up. Notice picking elbow up, not picking up. All right, I'm not picking my elbow up enough, picking my elbow up enough. Notice how the trajectory as my sword leaves the pel changes from coming out at a great angle to coming out mostly flat. That's what picking up my elbow does for me, right? Also, which I just did there in the end, never want to straighten our arm all the way, right? That last time I straightened my arm all the way, I got a little twinge in my elbow as a reward for that. So we want to keep a slight bend in our arm, right? Look at the overhead, slight bend in the arm. We never want to go all the way straight. A completely straight arm puts you at much greater risk for elbow injuries. We don't want elbow injuries, right? Our goal is to become great fighters without ever hurting ourselves, right? I did not do that because I was often foolish about my training. I didn't know as much. So I'm trying to give you the benefit of my experience. So that was our 30 fast pitch wraps. Now it's time for a new shot, right? This new shot is a wrap. It's our last wrap for same side wraps in same side wrap week. And so far we have learned the flat wrap where we come out, we rotate, and then pick our elbow up and rotate over. All right, this brings me to a palm down, hit with the back edge of the blade. All right, it's a round sword. Imagine it has edges. We're role playing here. All right, so here, bam. Then the second one is a fast pitch. Right, I'm throwing basically with the flat towards my target, and then when I get to about the same spot as the other shot, right, then I pick my elbow up, and that converts it into a sideways motion, and I can push my hand out to the outside lane a little bit to put a little more wrap into that. So those are the 2 wraps we've learned so far, right? The third wrap is definitely be our fastest wrap, right? It's also be the one that takes a little bit more muscle to get done, so it may not be optimal for people that don't have as much upper body strength, right? That's one reason we learn multiple shots, is so that we have choices, right? If I don't have the upper body strength to throw a particular shot well, and I decide I don't like it, I should have a lot of other backups, right? So if you want to be a warlord, you should know how to throw all these shots, because if it'll work for you, at some point you're going to have to teach them to other people, so you should know everything, right? If you just want to be a better fighter, then we're getting to the point where I'm teaching you a whole bunch of tools, and you'll use the tools and toolbox you like best, right? If all you do is hammering things, and that's how you want to play, that's fine. Just learn how to use a hammer, right? So this shot, this is a chop. So I'm going to start with just a straight chop, but I'm not going to throw it into my target because it's a wrap. And if I throw it into my target and then wrap, weird things happen. So instead, I'm going to throw it next to my target as if I was just chopping. Right? This is my straightforward momentum chop, my vertical chop. And then, basically the same place where with my pitch shot, my fast pitch wrap, I rotated my hand. I'm going to rotate my hand from here too. Right? So I'm going to come here, and then I'm going to rotate my hand, pick my elbow up again, right? Because that's how we're doing it. This isn't just keep your elbow down and roll your wrist into it, right? That is a less optimal shot, right? I want to bring my elbow up because that uses a stronger muscle and doesn't strain my wrists. It uses a more durable muscle, and it gives me a motion that this arm likes to do, or this joint likes to do, which is come up. So when we get to here, lift that arm up, right? Notice, not a big change, right? So from here to here, but that changes the angle of my weapon and puts the back edge into my opponent. So nice and slow, looks like this. And it's okay to make sound effects. I do it. Sound effects are great. They help you remember to breathe when you're throwing shots. Never hold your breath when you're fighting. So throw here, rotate in. Throw here, rotate in. Throw here, rotate in. All right. And now at speed, that's what it looks like. Notice this shot's going to definitely deflect more at a downward angle because I've got just straight downward motion that I'm trying to convert into lateral motion, right? And that means I'm going to get some hybrid of the two, right? If you want to go back to math, I've got two vectors, a vector going this way and a vector going that way. And when you add two vectors together, you get a third vector that goes at an angle, right? And that means I'm going to hit at an angle. And as we know also from our physics, the angle of incidence, the angle we hit something, equals the angle of reflection, the angle it bounces off. So if I come in at a 45-degree angle, I'm going to bounce off at a 45-degree angle, right? Assuming a perfectly bouncy surface that doesn't have any deformation. Obviously, a Pell is a little bit different, but that's the general physics. Aren't you glad you tuned in for today's physics lesson? So, this shot, vertical chop with a little bit of wrap, right? Not a lot. Notice my elbow's not coming all the way up. I can, right? But I'm generally not going to have time because it's a very quick motion, right? So a little bit of wrist, it's brought about by my elbow, and you can actually add a little bit of wrist rotation, not a lot, but a little bit of wrist rotation to kind of put that last bit in, right? So, bam, bam. Notice again, this gets a lot more deflection than my other shots because I've got so much initial downward momentum, right? One of the advantages of this shot is it looks like a chop that's going to miss, and that's less likely to trigger people's response because that's not a trained response to block shots that aren't going to hit them. Right? If I throw a shot over here at somebody who's standing here, they don't go, oh, I better block. They go, oh, what are you doing? Right? And so we're throwing near them and then rotating into them, right? With that rotation at the end, right? Boop, boop, right? Notice arm is coming out. It's not all wrist, right? There's a little bit of extra wrist rotation there. So let's throw that shot 10 times slow, and then 10 times medium, and then 10 times at whatever our best speed is. Right? This is a wrap most people are familiar with, right? Some variation of this. So even if you're familiar with it, it's always good to work through slow and make sure you're doing it exactly right. Because again, the reason we're pelling is to perfect our form. We're not doing it because we just want to spend time hitting things. Right? Well, maybe we're also doing it for that reason. All right, 10 slow. All right, that was 10 slow. I've actually thrown the shot enough that I actually have trouble doing it slow, which means it's good for me to practice that form, because doing it only at high speed means I have less control than I should have. So, upper camera's blowing around in the wind again, but now it's weighted and won't tip over. 10 medium. Oh, wrong shot. All right, that was 10 medium. Now do 10 at your best speed you can do it correctly. That might be the same speed, that might actually be slower, that's fine. We're worried about getting this right. Good. So that was our 10 wraps with a chop rotated into a wrap. It gives us our third and final same side wrap. So now, because it is a new shot, we're gonna practice with our hand. Right? Whenever we learn a new shot, we learn it with both hands, and then we go back to doing things one hand at a time per day. So that was our sword leg back though. We still need to do sword leg forward. So again, 10 slow, 10 medium, 10 at our best speed. A little slower for my slow. All right, 10 a little bit faster. And then 10 at our best speed. Good. All right, again, it's never about racing to the end. I'm not watching you, no one's watching you, no one's judging you, no one's give you any points for getting it done quickly, right? There's no reward for that. There's nothing special about going fast. It's about doing it right. So now the offhand that I talked about, I'm gonna move my camera over and we're gonna do right hand chop wraps. All right, so we've got our camera over now. So let's go ahead and do the right hand. This is going to be sword leg back to start with. We're gonna go chop to miss, and then we're going to rotate, right? Notice elbow came up, rotate up. So 10 slow, right? Don't want to chamber. A little choppy there. A little too early in the turn. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, 10 a little bit faster, or if you're still having trouble with that speed, that's fine. Stay at the speed that works best for you. If it's a new shot for you, you definitely need to work through it slowly a lot before you get to speed. So 10 at a more medium speed. All right, last one a little bit better. I'm not picking my elbow up enough if you're watching at home. So I should have been here and picking up, and I'm not. So I'm not getting as much wrap into it as I would like. So let's do 10 a little bit faster, or if you need to work through them still at slow speed, that's fine. Good. So when you're throwing these wraps, especially this last one, your sword may turn your hands a little bit. So it might be good to start wearing gloves or taping your fingers so you don't get blisters. We are starting to throw a lot of shots, so you want to make sure you're protecting your hands. With that said, that wraps up today, day 19 of Pelling with Glen. So thank you for joining me, and I'll